Welcome in, Warchant Game Day. Great to be with you. Florida State and Clemson. It feels like an interminable wait all week as we get set for this game, but it is finally here, just an hour away. And so it is. Tom and I reconvene with an opportunity to talk to you guys about Florida State and Clemson. And, I don't know, maybe the biggest game Florida State's played in a regular season in 8 or 9 years. So that's accurate there, Tommy?
It is, and you know what? It didn't feel that way. It was some weeks you feel it on Tuesday, but today, this morning, waking up, sitting outside, enjoying the fall weather in Tallahassee, unseasonably cool for September. It washed over me, man. I'm ready to go. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, it was my mindset as well. Eyes opened early, kind of staring there at the ceiling, thinking, thank God game day is here. It is time. And Florida State, all that's left is to prove it. I think one of my favorite things about this game, Tom, as we talk about it, and we'll take your questions as well in here, and we'll maybe try to illuminate who's healthy, who's not. We'll get a report from Ira, I'm sure, via text. I know on game day already, College Game Day on ESPN, they've announced that Akeem Dent is out. So is Robert Scott. No surprise about Robert Scott. Also, as I said and alluded to earlier in the week, not a big surprise that Maurice Smith is going to play. I thought he looked good all week during practice and was out there. They held him back. But he dressed. And so you had a good sense that he was going to play. And then as far as Akeem Dent goes, the thought was leading up to yesterday even that he was going to really try to give it a go. But you and I know, Tom, the problem with hamstring injuries, they can really, really plague you for long periods of time, nag at you. You got to get them right before you ever go back out there, or you just re-injure it. They're going to need him for the rest of the year. They chose not to go that route. So a lot of responsibility on some guys that will fill that role that Akeem Dent normally does. We saw Kevin Noles attempt to do that a weekend ago. He was terrible. Let's hope that they've got an answer for that this weekend, either scheme or personnel or both. I think can answer that question for Florida State. Doesn't this just feel like, and I wanted to say this before I went on my rant about who's hurt and who's not. I guess it's not a rant. It's just more about an observation. But the fact that this game is more of a straight up slugfest to me. I really come back to this, Tom, and I think you do too. This is Florida State's offensive line needing to play well today. You could say that about any game, but I think it's especially true because Clemson's defensive front is one of the better elements of their team. And then I think for Florida State, the defensive line has to dominate against the run game today. Sometimes we overcomplicate these football games. Sometimes it really does just get back to winning the line of scrimmage. And in particular today, Tom, when Clemson has the ball, it's winning the line of scrimmage in the run game on first down. I think if you do that, you set the stage for an awful lot of success and ways to pressure the quarterback who's young. Klubnik has not played in a game of this magnitude. Could be really interesting today if they can get him behind the chains early.
Yeah, I think first down is critical for both sides of the ball. Florida State hasn't been great on first down, and it's time to see this offensive line and whoever's going to be a tailback. I mean, Trey's going to start, but whoever's going to be there for the balance of the game, fire off the ball. Play like men. Let's do this. This is a game where you don't wait. Hit them before they hit you. Take that extra step, man. This is something that you saw against Boston College. Maybe it's because of health. Maybe. But they were timid. There's no need to be timid today. You air it out. You're more talented than Clemson, 1 through 22, when you're talking about both sides of the football. So let it happen. Don't be afraid of the moment. Let it happen. And look, Clemson's already got some bad news this morning. Wide receiver Antonio Williams is out for this game. That's big-time news for FSU when you're talking about safety in the middle of the field. Continue this feeling in the air, which is they're not at 100%. We had our flu game last week. Ascend, guys. This is your opportunity. You're more talented than Clemson on that field for the first time in a long time. Maybe 2015, definitely 2014 you were. But I think after that point, it gets murky as to who was the more talented team in a given week.
Yeah, and I think if you win the line of scrimmage, everything else falls into place because now you set up all those other things you like to do with the play action and the rollouts. And, again, I will say that I said all week long, and I'll reiterate here, I think it's a big day for the tight ends. Now, this is an interesting game because I will note that I think Clemson's linebackers are very good, Tom. And this is why you have to hope to get them going side to side. And wear them down and then kind of introduce the running game. Do you think, and I'll ask this to our listeners, I'll ask this to everybody because it's an unknown, and Mike has done a very good job of changing strategies game to game, team to team, matchup to matchup. Very, very good at having something that is unique for that personnel. Do you think Florida State decides to come out playing tempo, spread it out, and throw, which sets up the run game and wears down the defensive line and those linebackers? Or do you think they try to establish the run, something they've struggled to do early in games and all 3 games this year, quite frankly?
Yeah, Mike Norvell says that it's about us. It's not about what they do. And that has a dictate mindset to it. I will say, though, based upon what Clemson presents before the snap, it's pretty obvious what they're going to do. Sometimes they have 3 down linemen. Sometimes they have 4. Sometimes they show pressure. Sometimes they show that they're going to be back in a shell. And I think those reads pre-snap are going to dictate the play that we call or the part of an RPO that we run. So if they're showing that they're going to sit back in a zone, then run it right down their throat, guys. But if they're showing pressure at the line, we know that Jordan understands blitzes and understands where to go with the football very well. I think sometimes the way that Clemson or defense in general can play dictates how you're going to answer on offense. I know that we would prefer it that we attack them and then they have to adjust. But, I mean, I think it would be silly to call a simple counter run into the teeth of what is shown to be a 6 or a 7-man pressure from Clemson pre-snap. So I put it in Jordan's hands if I'm Mike Norvell, and I say, look, you know where the outlets are. You know this offense inside and out. Based upon what Clemson shows, here's what we're going to do. And they trust him to do the run check thing and the checking into different plays. They've talked about that for the last really 2 years. They said 2 years ago he was really good about checking into the proper play. I think you just put it in his hands and say, whatever they're doing, we've got an answer for it, man. So make sure that you don't force something that you want to happen, like a downfield shot, and take what they're giving you. Because if you do that today, you're going to win.
Great feature for those that didn't get to see it on Jordan Travis today on ESPN's College Game Day. Hopefully you guys have watched it. If you haven't, I alert you to it now to be able to go back and watch it. Just in terms of how far he's come from a maturity standpoint and how he's been able to find outlets such as fishing. I know a lot of people know that. Beautiful shot. And I think more than anything, what I heard in there was a guy who's calm and ready to play good football, and a guy who kind of has some balance in his life. And I've said all week long, this is a Jordan Travis game. This is, you have the better quarterback, the more experienced quarterback, the guy who's come an awful long way in his career from being really kind of on the verge of quitting the game or at least switching positions to a guy that's thought of as one of the best 10 quarterbacks in the country. When you have that as the backdrop, a lot of times we so hyper focus on our team and their deficiencies, and we forget to just look big picture of what the two teams are. And I think if I reverse this and I decide I'm a Clemson fan for a day and I'm figuring out how do we win the game, what I'm most nervous about is the fact that they've got Jordan Travis and I've got Cade Klubnik. I'm really not in love with that matchup if we're just talking about quarterback for quarterback. And I get we talk about line of scrimmage and it matters greatly. But I'll tell you what, in big games, how you handle your nerves in big moments, how you handle the speed of the game, the intensity of the game, the first, third, and long, and you get pressure. All of that is huge. You'd like to believe today that Florida State has a decisive edge in those intangibles, how you handle nerves, how you handle pressure, third and long, noise, time of the game, score. Those kinds of things should all be in Florida State's favor, at least at quarterback.
Oh, across the board. Every phase of what a quarterback does, Jordan Travis is better than Cade Klubnik. And that's it. It's a snapshot in time. This kid has a lot of tools, and maybe a year or two from now, it would be a dead heat, but it's not a year or two from now. You don't play each other when you're at your best. That's the beauty of college, is that you have this moment. And, somebody said in the chat, Tom, you look a little nervous today, because I believe we've arrived, but they've got to show it, and they've got to go out and they've got to earn it. I think if you were putting this game on a neutral field, you wouldn't add just 3 points to the spread, right? This morning it was, Florida State -2. I don't think it'd be -5. It's 7.5, 8.5. I think Florida State on a neutral field is that much better than Clemson. But the spot where this game is, desperate for Clemson after being 0-1 in the ACC and losing to Duke, being at home and seeing what Florida State did last week against Boston College, that something like that effort is in Florida State, has this betting line where it is. But I am of the belief that Florida State is significantly better than Clemson. If you're just talking about player for player, they got to go do it. And if you do, then you have the inside track for all of the goals that we've been waiting so long for. So this feels like a humongous moment in the tenure of Mike Norvell as Florida State's head coach. And that's where the nerves come from, because an hour from now, we're going to start to get those answers as to whether or not they're as good as we think they are, because they certainly showed it against LSU in that second half in the opener.
Well, when you reveal a level of immaturity that they did a weekend ago, you kind of get nervous about it because this is a grown man's game here, going on the road trying to win this game and take it away from Clemson. Now, Clemson will fight hard, and one of the things that Clemson has going for them is that they are tough, and I think that begins in the run game with Will Shipley. Both backs are great. Shipley is a tough kid, and he's been a tough kid for 25 years at Clemson. Good God, I'm tired of hearing that kid's name, but he runs with an edge. If you look at the broken tackle statistic that we all like to look at for backs, you can look at yards after contact. This kid is one of the best in the country, and he has been for a long time. And that is always a great indicator of how tough a guy runs, right? Will runs hard. And if you don't bring a lunch pail to the party here, you're going to get run over, and extra yards are going to be the norm of the day. And that's going to require at that point, for you to be extra special on 3rd and short. You don't want that. We want 3rd and 5 and long. We want a young quarterback in Cade Klubnik to have to feel this pressure in a down and distance that's not obviously ideal. And so you got to win first down in the run game. I'm going to keep coming back to it. But is Florida State tough enough? I think so, but we're not 100% certain. This game will reveal that, certainly, if they're tough enough. If they are, Tom, from a physical standpoint, meaning running, passing, catching, all of those things, Florida State, I do think, has the better athletes.
Yeah, they were tough enough against LSU. That's why last week is so befuddling. Like, is it just that blip on the radar, and are they something else? Because they were tough enough, even in that first half when they're giving up 300 yards to LSU, and a lot of big plays and a lot of moments where you go, are we even any better at all? They get in these situations that are do or die, like 6 straight plays inside the 10-yard line, and they get a stop against LSU, another 4th down stop later on. Situationally against the run, they were physical enough to beat up an LSU offensive line that's going to be one of the best they see all season long. Did they run the ball traditionally well against LSU? No. That's where the are you tough enough question is. Are you tough enough? They did in the second half to help close the game out. They wore them down a little bit at that point. But are you tough enough from the jump to take it to a Clemson defensive line that, frankly, you did too last year? You were tougher than the Clemson defensive line last year with what I believe to be an inferior starting 5, the offensive line. Even with Robert Scott out, I think this starting 5 left to right is better than last year's. And they were tough enough to handle Clemson in that game in Tallahassee. Come on, guys. Go ahead and do that again today.
Yeah, I just keep coming back to the defensive line over and over again. I'm not as worried about our offensive line, although they've been somewhat average in the run games up to this point, to your point that you just made. But I think defensively, this game to me is about the offenses, meaning Florida State's offense has an opportunity to really steal the day. And can Clemson's offense keep up? I do think Clemson's defense will make some plays, but I trust Jordan Travis. I trust Mike Norvell. They'll find a way to move the football. They have more weapons. I've mentioned the tight ends, but Keon Coleman will surely bounce back if he's healthy. We know Johnny Wilson bounced back last weekend, but you have so many other weapons. I do think you'll get Trey Vincent to run hard this week. I think you saw a kid who probably was a little hesitant, thinking too much. I think they've relayed to him the need to put your foot in the ground and go. Saw some of that in practice this week, so that's a good sign. If not, you got other guys that can really run the football, so we know that. But are you tough enough to, in my mind, really bring it to Clemson on first down in the run game, put Klubnik behind the sticks? This defensive line was great against LSU. If they dominate today, they're going to win the football game, and it really might not be that close. If you put that kid in a position where he has to come from behind, they get down in this game, and he's in 3rd and obvious, this could be a very long day. They're going to try like heck to stay out of that situation, and they're going to try to do that. What's a young quarterback's or a rookie quarterback's in the NFL's best friend? A run game, a tight end. Well, they got a 6'6" tight end who's really good, who played well last weekend. They've got a run game. They've got to rely on it. You shut that down, you win this game going away.
Yeah, I think so. This is the desperation of what Clemson has to do. That's the context of this matchup. And again, why an unranked Clemson, like if you look at the game day graphic, Clemson doesn't have a number next to its name. Florida State has a top 5 number next to its name. And it's only -1, -2, -2.5. Like, what gives there? If I'm somebody living out in the West Coast, I'm going, so does that mean Florida State is just not that great? Are they overrated? Is it that Clemson is a sleeping giant here, and the record is not belying of what they are? Well, if you take that logic and you test it, I'd say go position by position here between Florida State and Clemson. There's only 3 position groups that I think that Clemson is superior to Florida State.
Linebacker's one of them.
That's correct. Safety, I think, especially with Akeem Dent out, is another. And then running back. I don't think the running back margin is wide, but I mean, come on now. We played 3 games and we're not seeing what we need to see out of the running backs for Florida State. And Maffa's a really good player too, so they're fortified in that group. Other than that, O-line, D-line, if you want to go end, interior, receiver, certainly not, tight end, quarterback, of course, outside corners. Florida State has the edge in so many positions against Clemson, and it's just such a weird spot to be in. We've been conditioned and beaten down, brother. This is 7 in a row. They're trying to make it 8 today, and it feels every bit of 7 or 8 in a row. It just feels so strange, where it didn't for 10 years, but it feels so strange that Florida State has a decided edge in talent in most positions, play a position for position today.
Yeah, what's strange for Florida State, I'm fortunate enough, obviously, to have been going to games for a very, very long time, to watch the ebbs and flows and the rising tide, and where Florida State got to be the best team in the country and a program that 14 straight years in the top 4 and all that. One of the things that was interesting about Florida State as they were on the precipice of winning their first national championship was that they had been so dominant for so long without having won one. So the reason I bring this up is I'm talking about the context of today's game. I'll get there. But you build up to that excellence, right? And so you win a lot of games, and then all of a sudden, all that's left is to win that final game. And people were very frustrated that Florida State clearly, oftentimes at the end of some of those seasons, looked like the best team in the country, and for whatever reason, either didn't play in the game or lost the game. And then 93 happens, and they finally break through. Well, from that point forward, every year you went into the season knowing you could win it all, knowing you were the best program or one of the 2 or 3 best programs in college football. So every big game, like today is a big game, every big game, you were equipped. You had done it. You had climbed the mountaintop. You were a great team. You had won big games like this one. You had gone on the road and won games. You'd gone undefeated. You'd done these things, right? And so that builds into 99, and you culminate it with the national championship, and you go wire to wire, and you become the first ever football team in college to do that. And so another trophy on the mantle, and Florida State just keeps on humming. All right, we get into 2000s, and then there's the downside. We all know the lost decade when Tom was in school. So then what has to happen? Well, legendary career ends, and Jimbo comes in, and we have this buildup again, trying to get back to the glory days. And once again, you start fresh with the question marks. Can you take, can you go win big games in these moments? Unlike the previous 14, 15-year run where it was already answered going into those moments, you weren't real sure because you were coming out of 5-loss seasons, 6-loss seasons, 4-loss seasons. And then it happened in 2013. We thought it was going to be 2012. But it happened in 2013, and Florida State went, and we know what happened against Clemson in 2013. Florida State goes and wins big and dominates the game, and it's Katie bar the door. They end up winning 29 straight games. They win a national championship. They go to the first ever college football playoff. They do all these things, and then that ends. And we know what happened from there, the tumult that Florida State found themselves in and the frustration. Mike Norvell comes in, and think about how quickly this has happened. Your nerves are the direct result of having gone from 0 to 100 in seemingly a season and a half. I mean, you really went from not being a very good football team at all. You were hoping Mike Norvell was the guy. It seemed like he might be. He said all the right things. Culture was beginning to shift, but we were in a COVID year and they lost a bunch of games. And then they went 5-7. They weren't any good. And then you have a 3-game losing streak last year. And people say, well, here we go again. Is it not the time? That win streak at the end of last year, leading into this season, with the influx of even better players and an upgrade of the talent, the raised floor that we spoke of so often this summer, leads to expectations of a preseason top 10. You win the game against LSU, and now here we are. Can you go rip it away and be the dominant team in the league again? The ebbs and flows of a program is on the verge of being dominant again. It is ours. If it's taken today. If not, more question marks on the heels of a narrow win last weekend, some question marks about maturity and toughness. You lose today, they're all there. We're all going to be talking about this over and over and over again. You win today, and it is ours. We are atop the mountain. Come get you some.
Yeah, it's just if you want to get down to the the brass tacks of it. If not now, when? This is, I mean, this is ripe. Everything.
Well, you lose today, Tom, and you're going to say it's at the ACC championship game if you're lucky to get there because others now control your destiny.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you run the table, you'll probably be in the ACC championship, even if you lose today. But it's just, I mean, everything from the circumstances with the injuries, and I know we've got a couple ourselves, but it's not like Clemson's operating at peak right now. They're starting right guards out. Antonio Williams is out. They might have an injury or two in the secondary. We'll see as warm-ups continue to go. The kickoff time, it's noon. This isn't a night kick at Clemson. I think that matters. That's worth a little bit. And then the spot that you're in, which is you should be furious about your second half effort. The coaching staff was. Mike Norvell certainly was about the lapse in concentration, the lack of edge. Like, honestly, think about that from a big picture standpoint. We didn't have the edge that we needed. That's not something that Mike Norvell ever wants to say or admit. And it's something he had to admit in the post-game presser, in his Monday press conference. It's something that he's pushed for. They should be furious today. So given how this all lays out before you, you're going against a quarterback making his 5th career start. This isn't somebody who's been at Clemson for 3 years. They don't have receivers like they had for the better part of 8 seasons in which they're churning out second only to Alabama in terms of year after year first-round picks at wide receiver. Come on now. Today's the day. Now go do it. And there's going to be a moment early on, maybe because of the desperation that Clemson plays with, where there's a pushback. But if you can break through in this circumstance, then, man, everything is before you that we were hoping would be before this team. And I want it for this group. There are so many kids like Maury Smith, who's starting today at center. If you're just joining us, they've seen it all, man. They've seen all of the dysfunction. You want a kid like that to be rewarded for staying the course. So many have left. He stayed. And others like him, you want them to be rewarded for all the things that they've been through with what Florida State should be this year. And today, it starts today.
Yeah, it's a fun opportunity. I mean, I think you got to look at it that way, too. It's not this dreadful thing that you have to go and do, like give a speech before 10,000 people that you're a little worried about. This is an opportunity to showcase your wares, to showcase the hard work, to showcase the dedication you just referenced. It's all of those things. By the way, let's answer some questions here. 100 Proof Football wrote in, and doff the cap to you, 100 Proof. Seems an apt name given what he wrote. Been sipping on Weller since 7 a.m. here in the high country. Mid-season form, my brothers. Put a smile on your face. Go Noles. Hang in there, 100 Proof. 7 a.m. is an awfully early start time.
Well, I mean, he's out in the high country, so that probably means he's only been going for about an hour. Now, he's a great caller on the postgame. We haven't heard from him on the postgame show this year, but he is an exceptional caller. 100 Proof. Stay in tow today. If we get the win, we want to hear from you.
Lee writes, great show, guys. Who is the communicator in our secondary today? Well, it's a good question. For as much as we were excited about Shaheem this year, is he that guy, Tom? He's a great athlete. I feel like we could utilize him better, more up along the line of scrimmage. But is he a guy that is a great communicator back there? I'm not so sure. Jerrion Jones could be. You got some experienced guys that you like, but I am curious about that role.
Yeah, I know that nobody wants to hear it. I think it's Noles. This is somebody who in camp and in practice had shown a great aptitude of where to be, where to line up, and then the game happened and he wasn't himself. But again, in camp, he's coaching the other safeties from the sideline when he's banged up, and Mike Norvell had put that on the record that he had a setback. And I'm telling you, when it comes to details, pulling guys aside after plays and talking to them, he had that gravitas. Now, you got to be able to play to continue to hold that gravitas, but I would think that in the secondary, it might very well be Kevin Noles who's lining up.
Tom, you said it. You prefaced it, and you were correct. We don't want to hear that. Cody writes, are we surprised to be going into this game 3-0? The offseason expectations were 3-1, and the first 4 seemed great. Now 3-1 feels like it'd be a letdown. It does feel like it'd be a letdown because you did go win the LSU game, and you did dominate that game in the second half. That put a stamp of approval on what you could be. It suggested that all that we saw in camp with the talent and the ability to showcase said talent and match up difficulties for defenses was on display. You also won the line of scrimmage and dominated them in the red zone when they had opportunity after opportunity. So you showed you were tough enough, you were big enough, you were strong enough, you stopped the run, you did those things. That's why it would be a bit of a letdown, because we both think, Tom, that LSU is a better football team than Clemson. I believe LSU would beat Clemson on a neutral field. Hell, I might pick them to beat Clemson at Clemson. So, you're better than LSU. You've proven that back-to-back years, by the way. Those weren't flukes.
Yeah.
Go win this game. So that's why it would be a letdown. I will caution everybody at the outset here. We've watched a lot of good teams across college football. We say all the time on the Jeff Cameron Show, weekdays 1 to 3, you guys know that show, that, listen, we live in this fishbowl here where we hyper-focus on our team and the good and the bad, and we ride the wave. But we watch good teams all around the country struggle in games and have clunkers, and we don't lampoon them as if they can't play football anymore. We say, what a shock that was. Man, I can't believe Georgia struggled with Missouri. I can't believe Georgia struggled last week with South Carolina, or I can't believe Alabama barely beat USF. Now, maybe Alabama's in trouble. I don't know. It's a weird year. But the point, you get my point. The season is not lost if Florida State is to fall today. How they lose will be very telling, though, and it will dictate the narration that we have the rest of the way, Tom. If you go and lose this game because you get beat up and you're physically manhandled and we have some miscommunications in the back end yet again, we're going to have an ugly conversation on Monday about personnel, about certain coaches, and about what Florida State's going to have to do to take the next step. However, if this is a great all-time classic football game between two really good teams played on the road for Florida State and we lose 30-27 and do a lot of things right, I'm not sitting here at 4 o'clock today thinking Florida State's season's over. Conversely, I will tell you this. If Florida State were to win a nail-biter of a football game, but show some problems yet again, another week into the season where they are not buttoned up in areas and they yet get this win and are 4-0, it will still be fair to come in on Monday and say, yeah, they're 4-0 and I'm happy and they're riding high and all of their goals are in front of them, but this team's got to get better here, here, and here, and we can have that conversation. And, of course, finally, there is the unforeseen scenario by which if Florida State were to get blown out, I don't see that. It would be interesting. You know, there's one final scenario, and that is that Florida State goes and wins 37-7. And we're talking about a team that might win the national championship. So there you go. That's all the different angles.
Well, that's where we were 10 years ago leaving Clemson. We were in the car listening to Barry White, as I recall, after a 51-14. Was that the final score? Drubbing of Clemson.
It was certainly an ass beating, yes.
And it was, that's the talking point was, oh, okay. So, in that time, there were only two teams that were allowed to play for the title. We're going to be one of those teams. Like this, that's it. Yeah. It's done, folks. I don't know that they can do enough today to have me believe that. There are 4 teams now in the college football playoff, but it's just, to me, I think if Clemson was to win, and let's say it was a nail biter, that 30-27 style of victory, the only way that you could be satiated and say is later on is because Clemson plays Notre Dame, they play North Carolina, they play Miami.
If they go win those games.
If they're to win all of those games and we see each other in Charlotte, like only at that point would we say, oh, well, that makes more sense. The circumstances by which what we know of Clemson in the small amount that we know about them, they played Duke. That's it. They played Duke. They lost 28-7. That game probably should have been a nail-biter in the low 20s between the two teams, which might be a statement in and of itself on Clemson, but you just don't know a whole lot about what they are. I'm sure that offense for Garrett Riley today is going to have a few formations and a few plays that they haven't put on film yet. It's his first year as Clemson's coordinator. So there's unknowns that are going to be presenting themselves, but even with the little knowns that we've seen, Clemson does not look nearly as impressive as Florida State when we play at our best. I expect to win this game today, in short. This is what I'm trying to say. I expect to win this game today, and I don't know that there is a silver lining pill that I can take if they lose, even if it's close and even if it's a well-played game.
Well, I would tell you it's certainly a lot easier to swallow that pill if you play well. I think that's the whole thing. You got to go play well. If you play your best game, I agree with you, Tom. Florida State's the better team. But let's say both teams play a very, very good game. I don't think Clemson's bad because they lost to Duke. I think Duke's good. I think Clemson played poorly in situations in that game, especially in the red zone, especially inside the 10. But I don't think they're a bad team. And I don't think Duke is a world beater, so I'm not trying to tell you that. I just think they're a good team, and Elko's a good coach. So, you got to go play well. I mean, nobody is going to, lose sight of the fact that Florida State has to go and take it. You can't have 5 straight offensive possessions like they did last week where you don't move the football and you have to punt and you give it up. You can't have it. You can't have it in this game. To me, you've got to be buttoned up. You've got to be efficient. They haven't won first down in the percentage that you should. They've tried to hunt the big play in ways that they shouldn't. And you've had some guys not play to their capabilities, namely Trey Benson. So you have an opportunity here to have all of that come together now and unleash the beast, which was the second half against LSU. Tom Ortner, just for you, I saw that you donated it and you have the classic woo, suck it, Clemson. There it is. I gave it to you. I knew you wanted that. And Noel Kev, Xbox headset on, red Solo cup in hand. Let's go, Noles. Additionally, what do you think is going through Norvell Dabo's minds right now? Times could be changing. Well, I find that fascinating, what's going through their mind. Did you see Mike Norvell walking into the stadium this morning? Did you see that sweet suit and that focus on his face?
I'm sure.
I was buoyed. It was nice. It was a guy who was locked the hell in, as you imagine he would be. Never seen a person more locked in for a big game against Clemson on the road than I did Jimbo Fisher coming out of that tunnel with the play sheet in hand and Wilder flexing for the world to see, as everybody knew Florida State was about to put it on Clemson, at least those of us inside the program. Clemson didn't know it, but let's see that coming out today. Let's see that from Mike Norvell, and I'll feel very, very good. I think it's there.
Twofold. Did you watch that at all this week, that game? Any replays, any highlights of it?
The 2013 game?
Yeah.
No, I did not.
I did last night.
Just to get pumped up.
just to remember. Well, I mean, this is a nostalgic game for me. You know, because we were standing on the field, different places. We didn't know
ushered in an era. Yeah.
Yeah, we were standing on the field for that game, and you know, Clemson just kind of let it happen. And I was standing next to a couple of state troopers that were South Carolina fans, and they said, "You can stay down here. We don't care."
Yeah.
And in the end zone, where they fumble on the first play from scrimmage, and then a couple plays later, KB catches the ball in the corner of the end zone. I just remember standing there and seeing how high that guy went up in the air. And then shortly thereafter, I watched Mario Edwards Jr. running with a scoop and score into the same end zone, the same part of the end zone, and just being blown away at this is happening. This is something that's happening. And that's always a fond memory that I have of this specific game and how loud it was that night before it got silent that night. And all you heard were the marching Chiefs and Florida State fans. A mutual friend at the time of ours had hopped over the fence early and gotten thrown out of the stadium. Like, just top to bottom, a memorable night in so many ways. But the other side of that is, I'm tired of looking back at 2013. I'm tired of looking back at 2014. It's 2023. We haven't won a game since then against these guys. Got to get off the schneid. You got to make it happen today. The stars are aligning, and then also you're just better than them. So go ahead and do it. So we don't have to be nostalgic and think about 2013 when you were in your early 40s and I was in my mid 20s. That's gone. That time is gone.
Lest you forget, Tom, we did beat them in 2014, so let's not shortchange ourselves.
Oh, I mentioned 14 as well. I mentioned 14
you said you're tired of looking back at 2013 as if that was the last time we won. No, we beat them in 2014.
Well, 14 wasn't as memorable. It's the Sean McGuire. Oh my God, we got the ball back. I mean, that was, and they didn't play Deshaun. That was a weird game, but yeah.
Very weird game. Very weird game. A game won by Florida State. Now, that said, we have some other questions we should get to. I do like this when AJ writes, "Are you still lighting the candle, Jeff, or are we good enough?" I light candles at all times. I inherited that from my dad. So we love the candles around here in the Cameron household. I'm not lighting any candles this morning. That hasn't happened yet. So, and that's not necessarily an indicator of whether we win or lose or any of those things. That's just I like things that smell nice. That's all that is. Do you guys think that half the team playing for the first time in Death Valley, their performance will be affected by the noise and atmosphere? That's a good question, Michael. Appreciate that one. Well, maybe. I mean, I think you go on silent counts. I think they'll be prepared for it. Obviously, all teams these days, especially Florida State in that indoor practice facility, pipe in an awful lot of noise, and they had it on 11 this week when I was out there. So it was very, very loud. Yeah. Corey, there you go. I can't quite say what you're noting there. All right, Tom, I was hyped now. I'm hyped as AF. Good for you, Corey. Good for you. Yeah, Tom, I suppose. I mean, Keon Coleman's played in big games at Michigan State. They played Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, he's played in big games. Obviously, we know Jordan Travis has certainly played in huge games, loud noises, played right here at Clemson and played well. We know Johnny Wilson has. Jaheim Brown, Bell has obviously, as he's in the SEC. He played at Clemson, won the game up there at Clemson. So they've been around. All the offensive linemen for this team have played in big games, perhaps not Byers, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, most of these guys have all played in big games.
Yeah, it doesn't affect the defense. They're going to be quiet when the defense is on the field. So one phase, just throw that out. It's all about the offense. And Jordan was asked about that this week when he spoke. I think it was after Wednesday's practice. And he said all that is pre-snap communication. You know, that's the key. That's all you got to get through. Again, I'm not worried about Jordan. He knows what to do in this situation. But you did point to one offensive lineman. Casey Roddick, I don't think has been in a position like this before. Bless definitely has not been in a position quite like this. So I do want to see from a false start perspective. Like that, just no motion penalties. Make sure you communicate. The hard thing about this game and the way we run the offense, and specifically Jordan manages the offense, he asks the linemen to stay in their stance forever and a day. And if we can avoid that, it's not something we talk about a lot, But I mean, it'll be 22 on the play clock. We're up on the ball, and then we're waiting. He's looking to the sideline, and then we're at 16, and he claps his hands and goes, wait, hang on, everybody, hang on. We get inside of 10 seconds, and they've been holding in their stance for 15 and 20 seconds. When it's that loud, you might get a little jumpy. So I hope we don't see some pre-snap stuff, maybe a little nugget here for everybody. We saw a fair amount of pre-snap penalties in fall camp, but I think that's just a function of the offense not working together. Hopefully under the noise conditions today, that's a little bit cleaner, and we snap the ball instead of trying to pre-snap and adjust for 15 seconds at a time.
Well, one of the things that is frustrating for me so far this season, we haven't run a lot of tempo where your offensive linemen get an opportunity to play a play, line back up, play a play. Let's go. You're right. Keeping guys in their stance for that long a time is very frustrating for an offensive lineman. It's very difficult to do. Yeah. One of the things that isn't talked about when you have to do that is, are you at your best in explosiveness off the ball after having waited 20 seconds in your stance? It's very difficult to summon that same sort of charge after you've been sitting back trying not to jump, as opposed to being aggressive and forward pressing and playing with some tempo. Tempo only happens when you win first down. Florida State hasn't been winning first down. Go win first down. Get these guys on their heels. Get them going sideline to sideline with the boot game. Let's go. I would expect to see the screens today. I would expect to see the boot today. I would expect to see Jordan Travis's legs today. I got to believe that he's fully healthy. That's what they announced to the media, but that's what they're going to say. But moreover, if you have a jarred shoulder, if you will, the left shoulder, which is what he had last week, guys, it's a big boy game. You shoot that thing up, you're not even going to feel your shoulder. Let's go play football. As long as it's not injured, but rather just sore, that's what you do.
Couple of updates from stadium side. Here's Ira's updates on the boards at warchant.com. You can see a few things there, but Maurice Smith, of course, the report from ESPN earlier this morning said he was going to play. We can't talk about it. So then when it's reported, we're like, yep, that sounds about right. So that Maurice is in, that Robert Scott isn't. There's your left to right offensive line. Harris, Roddick, Smith, Emmanuel, and Byers. I would expect, I think you would too, brother, that Keandre Jones gets a couple of series at minimum in this game.
Sure, absolutely, especially in the run game, yeah. Absolutely.
That's been standard, so I would think he'll be back in there. But what Maurice Smith can do maybe to help settle those guys down to pre-snap would be important. And then, of course, Antonio Williams for Clemson is out in this game too, which is a big deal. He's their best receiver. They lost another receiver for the season earlier this week. They announced that at Clemson. And then Jordan does have some sort of wrap on his left shoulder. That happened last week coming out of the halftime locker room with Boston College. He was already wearing a sleeve, it wasn't quite a 3/4, but you could see it was a little bulkier on the left side coming out of halftime. I think he's fine. I don't know. You saw him this week in practice. We're a lot closer to game time. I think you can speak openly. I think he looked fine in the second half of the BC game.
Yeah, he was fine. I don't think there's any problem. It doesn't affect his throwing at all. If anything, it might affect his ability to run the football and deal with pain if he gets hit on that left side. I mean, we should talk about the fact there is the possibility he gets hit on that side again. Yeah. It doesn't affect your throwing motion as a right-handed quarterback with a left shoulder injury. And if we're talking about pain tolerance, that's one thing. But if that is a situation where it is injured and they're trying to hold it into place with that sleeve or a brace of some sort, and then he gets popped there, well, now you might be talking about something that's a bigger problem. So we shall see. We are not going to entertain the idea that on the road at Clemson, Jordan Travis doesn't play all 4 quarters. We need Jordan Travis to play in this football game. I think we all understand what might happen if that doesn't happen. So,
okay, so let's say that Clemson, you asked me the question, I skirted by it because I said, well, Clemson, the way they line up is going to tell you what to do on offense. If they played straight up, let's just say it's balanced. It looks like a standard 4-2-5 or whatever the hell they want to run, but it's standard. No blitz looks, no zone indicators. What would you do on first down if you're Florida State? Would you throw to set up the run or run to set up the throw?
I'd throw to set up the run. I actually think the team's personnel is better suited to be a passing team than they are a run team. I know that sounds strange. I know Mike Norvell's history is that he wants to run the ball. We do a lot off that counter. And he wants to be able to run that. But sometimes you got to look at your personnel and say, listen, I got an NFL receiver on one side, an NFL receiver on the other side, an NFL tight end here in the slot. I've got a quarterback who's mobile that can, under pressure can buy time and give opportunities for those players to get into space on broken plays. I've got a lot of things. If they go to man somehow and turn their backs on them, I can let them run. I've got a lot of opportunities here in the passing game. I don't think they'll do that, Tom. I think they'll run. I think they want to run the ball. If you establish the run, you take the crowd out of the game, You keep your defense off the field, and it sets everything else up. And that's his mindset. He wants to run. But the real question becomes, if it's not working, how soon do you go, spread it out, tempo, throw the ball, let's go? Because you have the better players in that situation. I believe you can win one-on-one battles.
Yeah, it's a tough ask. This is when we were listing concerns, and we couldn't find many of them in the preseason, but the concern was all about, what's your identity? When there's adversity, what are you? And what will you be? What do you choose to be? I think the easy answer is you design everything around Jordan Travis. Okay. But does that mean you design it around the RPO, the read option game, or is it that Jordan's throwing and it's a 4 wide? Like when push came to shove against LSU, they were 4 and 5 wide an awful lot that night.
Took over the game doing just that. They knew LSU's corners and safeties couldn't cover them. And I would argue there are very few teams who can. There might be a couple matchups where you say, oh, man, this team's strength is their secondary. Maybe that's a bad matchup for us. Maybe we should run the ball. But there aren't too many teams built that way. Most of the teams Florida State faces this year, including this one, I think you could line up and throw the football.
Yeah, the fascinating thing is last year, I think when Clemson had a better defensive front, just in terms of NFL talent. And
we ran the ball.
And Florida State had a worse offensive line. We ran the ball. And they did something that we saw indicators that they were going to run outside zone earlier before the Clemson game, but they didn't run it as successfully as they did until that night against Clemson. I just wonder. I'm not saying that they're going to have some new wrinkle, like they're going to run out of the I formation and run the dive or something along those lines. I just wonder, Mike always has something that you don't expect, and might that something be on the ground and not necessarily through the air? I wonder.
Could be. I would tell you that Mike's a tough guy to prepare for if you're a defensive coordinator. Very tough. And I think both coordinators this week are a little bit nervous. I think Riley's a good offensive coordinator. Yes. Obviously, I think Mike Norvell is. So I think this is going to be an interesting game for these defensive coordinators. I would also tell you that these two teams run the same principles. These two teams, defensively, we've seen this every day in practice for the most part. We out of that 4-2-5, right? I mean, we run the same principles.
Yeah, and offensively, the only principal difference I'd see from what we run and what Garrett Riley likes to run is that the inside straight ahead, out of the single back, out of the two back, is a big part of Clemson's offense. And that's not something that we do. Is it something we try and break out today? Maybe. I think we don't believe that we have the ability to do that with consistency, whereas Clemson does. Also, Will Shipley and Phil Bonfa are just really tough. They'll run you over. They'll fall forward. So make sure when they're falling, it's at the line of scrimmage so they get a gain of 1 and not 5 yards past the line of scrimmage so they get a gain of 7 or a gain of 8. But I would say that's the one difference if you're talking about Adam Fuller's defense and Clemson's defense and what they see every day in practice is that we still run more to the outside and we run gap a ton, obviously, but we don't run up the middle, and Clemson does. So that's the difference. The good news for this year's team is this defensive front showed out against LSU in such a way that I think they're going to be able to handle that. What does Clemson do to counter off of it? Do they run that 2-back set to death and keep it, like they could dribble both ways as they approach the basket? It's going to be so fascinating to see what these coaching staffs come out with in the first quarter, because that tells you what they saw on film. It's like, this is what we can do. This is what we can't do. I think there's a number of ways that both defensive coordinators could play it, and I think there's a number of ways that both offensive coordinators could play it. And we'll see how it shakes out here shortly.
A lot of intrigue. I think every offensive coordinator that faces Florida State's defense is just going to try to isolate their linebackers and safeties and see if they can make plays against them. I would. I'd make my linebackers at Florida State cover. I think that we struggle in that regard, and I think that's something you can expose. Hey, by the way, I know this may not be the environment. This may not be the day. This may not be the game. But Blake Nicholson's a kid that's going to play before this year is up because he can really cover, and he's put on size since he's gotten here. He plays a lot in practice, Tom. Yeah. I don't know, man. Do you trust that kid in coverage if you're getting beat with your linebackers today? You might. I mean, he's a good athlete. It'll be fascinating to see. I'm not calling for that to be the key to the game or anything like that. Just keep your eyes on little things here as the season progresses. That might be a little thing.
Yeah, like who the fourth linebacker is.
Yes.
Like that's because it was somebody
Omar Graham.
Probably not. Yeah. And can you keep the top two on the field for a bunch of the game? That's something that we didn't do even in the Clemson match, in the LSU matchup all that much. DJ Lundy made some big plays, don't get me wrong, but I would think if you can limit your rotation, just those three guys, and keep Kalen DeLoach on the field for more of the game than you did last week and Tatum Bethune, that would behoove you. That leads to a better chance of victory. So we'll see what the rotation is there. That's the other thing in general. We've rotated a lot of dudes. I've seen questions in the chat. Spartan Noles, one of them, that says, has all the rotating we've done through the first 3 weeks put us in a position to be fresher for today? Yeah, it should, but that doesn't mean you got to continue to do it. Like if you got to air it out today with the top line of your two deep, you got to buy in Virginia Tech in a week. Air it out.
Oh, of
Let
course.
your big-time players play 90% of the snaps. You don't have to rotate like crazy.
Yeah, no, this isn't a game to get guys experience. Unless you're up 30-0 in the third or something, maybe. But yeah, no, don't play around here. And I'm going to say a couple of things here. One might surprise you, and that is that is this the first time we've gone into a game in a very long time with a decisive edge in the kicking game? Florida State has the better kicker, period. They have a kicker who you feel good about right now in Fitzgerald. And if you're Clemson, you're calling a dude in his apartment who's out in the working world and begging him to come back so you can make him the starting kicker, and he's never played the game. Now, I like our chances in the kicking game here, guys. That's crazy to think about. Florida State has a decisive edge in the kicking game. So special teams, at least from field goal standpoint, we feel pretty good about. By the way, catch the punt today. And Keon Coleman, if you look shaky out there today in terms of catching punts, we get him out because it doesn't look good so far.
Yeah, I just wonder who the next guy is. I know you'd say, I don't care who it is. I understand that. But in camp, it was a 2-horse race between Lawrence Toafili. You don't want him coming off the bench.
Oh, God, no.
And Keon Coleman.
Well, maybe Winston Wright.
Yeah, just go catch the ball. That's your only job. No returns. Just go flag it down and communicate to your gunners if it's a shank so it doesn't go off their helmet and it turns into a live ball. Those are your two jobs. And then the other part of special teams for me would be in terms of kickoff coverage. Remember, Shipley had a big return last year. Can't let that happen. Clemson cannot make a big play in special teams. Any chance you get, this is also maybe where I disrespect Clemson's offense a little bit more as we get closer to kickoff. If you got 4th and 8 from the 48-yard line, punt it, make them go. Even at worst case, they have to go 80 yards because you kick it through the end zone. I don't care.
Oh, and
Tom, ball at midfield. Let's not do that nonsense.
No, I don't think he's doing that. Mike's aggressive with the 4th down math in the way that it's adapted and adopted now by coaches who very much have looked at the analytics, but it's not the insane thing that people have applied to him. He's not going back to when we had inferior talent and he needed extra possessions, so he just kept the ball and kept going for it. That's not what this is. I think he knows you don't go for it 4th and 9 on your 46. You don't go for it 4th and 8 on their 48 against a good team, Tom. Now, Southern Miss, whatever the hell, you had a kid who could just run around and play cartoon football. He doesn't think of that way about Clemson.
No, but if it's 4th and 2, I expect him to go if it's on the other side of the 50. He did against LSU, and that's what
I got no problems on 4th and 2.
Yeah. How about
I got a problem on 4th and 8.
How about 4th and 5 from their 46?
That's a tough one.
I think he goes, don't you? It's like,
4th and 5 from their 46?
Yeah.
No, I think he punts. 4th and 4 from their 46?
Now, you're going to get data as the game goes along about how your defense looks against their offense, and that would influence your decision. Like, if they're going down the field, and unfortunately we have to have a discussion about the defense again, and it's 24-24 in the third, you might go. You might do it. But if you're stopping them or they look disjointed or they're dropping passes, they had that problem before their receivers got hurt about dropping passes. Klubnik looks, flustered by pressure, which is something he has done in the brief career he's had in college football so far. Punt the damn ball, dude. Punt the damn ball. We'll see, though.
Kevin writes, we lost it. I was about to read Kevin's comment there. It came up. Now it's gone. Now it's back. Got my drink, Blacksmith, Guinness, and Smithwicks. Yay.
Oh,
Smithwicks.
nice.
Actually, we ain't leaving without a victory. Go Noles. Good job, Kevin. All right.
What do you think of the unis for today? Let me jump in real quick.
All right. Let's take a look.
Started pants we have not donned the white uniform yet in the 2023 look. So this is a debut.
This is a good look here. This is fine. It's a good look. I like it. It's clean. It's regal. We look good. I'm fine with that. Can I see? Those garnet pants?
Those are garnet pants.
Yeah, garnet pants. I like the garnet pants with the white tops. That's fine. I Still would have probably gone traditional, but that's fine. That's a good look. That's been in our arsenal before, so I'm fine with that. And that jersey's beautiful.
Yeah, it looks very nice.
I mean, the white jersey with the garnet number, that's a good look. I like it a lot.
Strong to quite strong. Yeah.
Strong to quite strong is correct. You and I, short of other news from Ira on location, have to kind of start thinking here, buddy, about predictions. And get ready for it. There's Keon Coleman hugging. Is that his mom? I would guess.
Mom, yeah, you could see the uniforms. It'll loop back here in a second, but there they are. Yeah.
There they are, looking sharp. Yeah, I like it. Interesting. This looks like a beautiful day at Clemson. We thought it might be. We're a little worried earlier in the week about the possibility of it being soupy, but no, it's a crisp, beautiful day at Clemson. Yep. No weather problems. Jacob Wright started driving to a bar, turned right around because I realized I'm too nervous to watch this game out in public. Well, Jacob, I got to tell you, I don't like to watch the biggest games that Florida State plays around a lot of people. You know, if you're a dear friend or a family member, fine, we'll watch it together. But I don't like being around a ton of people unless I'm in the stands or in the press box doing a gig. But if I did go in the stands, obviously in Orlando, and have a good time and played the role of fan against LSU. That was great because we had a lot of people converging from all over the state that went to Florida State, and we could get together for a tailgate. But yeah, these moments like this one, where supremacy of the ACC and perhaps a ticket to the college football playoff are at stake. Yeah, man, I'm good with being at the house. Don't need to be around a ton of other people.
Yeah, the large games like this one, and don't be fooled that we're top 5 and they're unranked. Like, this is a humongous game. This is it just speaks to so much of what's going on and could be happening right before our eyes. You want the torch to be passed our way in this rivalry. When games like that happen, game 7s in the Stanley Cup playoffs for you, buddy, or an NFL playoff game, your boy doesn't really hit the sauce. He doesn't touch it. No, you got to stay locked
until after the game, yeah.
Or until it's a rocking chair, like when they overload in the Super Bowl and Leonard Fournette scores and the Bucs go into the 30s. Maybe I cracked open a little bit.
Yeah. Once it was pretty clear the Bucs were about to win the Super Bowl, maybe a beer was cracked.
But that's wisdom on the part there. That's wisdom. We've got wise people in the chat, and maybe they'll join us for 50% off and be even more wise. But that shows poise in your fandom. Know who you are. If you can watch at the bar, then watch at the bar.
I'm not watching at the bar. Big game special, 50% off first year. How about this? 50% off for a warchant.com membership right now if you sign up today. Big game special, 50% off. So we're talking about less than $60 or thereabouts, $70, less than $70 for the year.
Yep, 55 bones. I mean, Z-Chan just threw down about that much in the super chat. Look at that.
Thanks, yes, he did. Good job, Z-Chan. Thank you so much. He writes, the streak ends today, 34-24 Noles. Appreciate you, Z-Chan, always. He's a pillar.
Mm-hmm. The official PMD.
So I've got, one of the ways that I keep from being overly nervous, Tom, is I've got the meats prepared. I've got the rubs on them. I've got all the oils. I've got everything ready to go. I'm about to fire up the grill outside here in about the next 5 minutes when we sign off with our prediction, and then I'll have the game on. Don't worry, guys. The television is grand, and I'll be able to see it from my grill, so no big deal. And then I just kind of keep busy. Just keep busy.
Okay, well, but I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. The 1,000+ here on Warchant TV. Hit the like button. Subscribing is absolutely free to Warchant TV. What were the rubs? What were the seasonings of choice? Because I know you've got a seafood choice and also old school meats too.
Yeah, no, I've got your classic garlic, salt, and pepper on the red meat. Garlic, salt, and pepper. You keep it pretty simple with that. I also have a buttery rub for one of the other meats that I like to use. It's also salty, but it's got a butter base to it that's really nice. And then for the massive fillet of fish, I do have a seafood, kind of a mixed bag thing that I use that I picked up in Georgia about less than a year ago, and it's been really, really good. I can't remember the name of it, or I'd tell you, but it's just a seafood rub that has got a lot of flavor to it.
Here's hoping we put a little butter rub on Clemson today.
Let's hope so. Here you go, Clemson. Here's a buttery rub.
It's a little butter rub.
Yeah. Here we go. Okay, Tom, it's time. I got to fire that thing up. Let's make our predictions. We did earlier in the week. I'm sticking with mine. I had Florida State winning this game 31-24, I believe I said, and I'll stick with that.
Yeah, 38-24 here. I didn't think that the 40 burger was possible, but you never know. Maybe the Noles get a little crazy today. Maybe they go on another 28-0 run at some point. It's just a matter of finishing the job here. Get the dub. We can argue and bicker about the process later. Let's get the result today and then keep everything before us in the next 8 games of the regular season. I want to be in that mix. We are squarely in the mix right now. Don't slip up today, guys.
For Tom Lang, I'm Jeff Cameron. We thank all of you. Don't forget, big game special running throughout. It is half off for the year. I don't know how you could beat it. You should do it.
I want to add one more thing for the folks. We've seen a lot of people in the chat say, hey, can you keep a chat open on YouTube so that we can talk during the game to each other? They just want to talk to each other.
Sure.
Well, the easiest way to do that, I'm putting the link in the chat right now for you folks. The post-game event is right there in the chat. You guys could talk to each other in the post-game show, get ready for it as we launch, but you can go in there right now, hours before the game. So if you want to talk to each other, there's the link. We've had a lot of questions about that, so there's your answer. The link is in the chat. Post-game show will be live about 10 minutes after the game's over.
And away we go. Enjoy the game, everybody. Be sensible. Have fun. Let's hope we're all celebrating. Either way, I'll be back with you on Monday for the Jeff Cameron Show. Tom will join me. We'll talk about all that. Of course, Tom and Gene will have the postgame for you that he just alluded to, and all of our great coverage from there on site. Corey is there. Ira is there. Obviously, Aslan is there. They're putting in the work. So we'll have a complete wrap-up of this football game, good or bad, either way, here at Warchant. All right, until next time, Tom Lang, good luck, brother. I will contact you afterwards, and we will talk soon enough. Be good, everybody. Go